Oh, hello. Good morning. It's not even actually that bright right here, but my eyes still feel like it is. So, I want to show you around my garden that I've been learning how to create with the help of other gardeners. So, I want to share the process I've been learning about what to do. So, let me just give you a little bit of a tour. All right, so here's our first garden that we started. We call it the spring bed because we started it in the spring to grow spring-like crops, especially sugar snap peas, which, as you can see by the yellow color, are now dying because, hey, it's July. They're like, we're so done with producing for you. So I'll just show you all of them. Look at, here's some down here. These are kind of old. They're all soft and leathery feeling. I'm going to pull out a blackberry. There's a bunch more dying snap peas up here. Let's see if there's any good ones left. I'll show you. A lot of these feel pretty leather. This one feels kind of soft. See, I might be able, but if you look at it, it's kind of, see, like this one is good actually. Oops. Let's try it out. That's pretty good. But most of these are not. See how dead this looks? And these, maybe you can't tell, it's all like wrinkly and stuff. Yeah, so snap pea season is pretty much over. But we've also planted these. Little kales are starting to grow. There's more. Oh, I've been experimenting with this hose system. These, I guess, were turnips that just went totally to seed. Interesting looking, huh? You got these little flowers on them. Boris planted those. This stuff is clover. So, all right. I weed out the pokey plants because I think they're assholes. In nature, I am going to encourage nice evolution, co-evolution with not pokey things. I'm just one human, so I'm going to make that much difference, but I'm going to try anyway. So let me just give you the rundown here. There's more. Summer garden is this bed over here that's pretty flat and covered with dead grass, and here we have a greenhouse. Over here is some sadly mowed over things, but we're considering putting in a herb garden right here. So, how did we do all of this stuff? Well, first of all, we decided on this spot on the side of the hill. That is our first garden. And just like all the stuff around it, all this blackberry on the ferns and other random grasses and stuff, it was covered. So the first thing that we did was hack it all down, maybe sort of similar to this, so that it was short enough that we could then dig it up. And luckily, this step involved a bunch of us. There were maybe 4 or 5 of us, and that made the work go a lot faster. So we had to dig up all of this earth, and we tried to just dump out or overturn all of the grass that was growing to kill it. And then once this was all dug up, we covered it with some compost. And the thing I guess I want to keep in mind is before I ever did any gardening, I thought I'd have to do a lot of soil studies, like get a sample and figure out what all of the different elements and chemicals and things are in it to know what to add to it. But hey, don't drink that water. That's for the plants. I know. I'm sorry. But I guess you don't necessarily have to do that. So we just added compost, which had, I guess, what we needed. Because everything grows like crazy in here. So we only added, enough compost to cover it all. And then we laid down clover seed, which is the cover crop. So the important thing about the cover crop is that if you have just bare soil exposed, all the water and moisture evaporates out, and other stuff can just leach out of the soil, other minerals and things. So it's good to have something covering the ground. It also holds all the soil together to make it stay in place. And so if it rains, it wouldn't all wash away or anything. And since this is a little bit of a hill, that could have happened. So we planted all that cover crop, which continues to grow, and I continue to pull it up to reveal all the, like you can see here, there's some beautiful kales and lettuce heads that are growing, and a cover crop grows over it, and I just pull off the cover crop to reveal the plants the other crops were growing, and I feed it to the chickens. I feed the cover crop to the chickens. So the next thing you can notice here is this amazing fence that we've made. The front part is the most beautiful. It's a living fence. So obviously I couldn't have done this by myself. The people that came out to help found all of these beautiful sticks, and they foraged it from our 12-acre property. So they went out looking for particular woods that were still alive enough that they would continue to grow, like this. You see this? This is now growing because we shoved it in the ground. These other fence posts over here, you might not be able to see the fence post in the back is alive. Some of these other fence posts are. And then all these little twigs were used in a sort of weave lattice structure to build this fence. We were going to do it all the way around, but we ran out of these twigs. So for the back part of the fence here, we just bought some fencing material, and that sufficed for that part. The reasons that we wanted the fence is because, as you see, I live with dogs, and there are other little critters on the property. So it's nice to protect the crops like that. Also, this back wall has been really good at keeping a lot of the blackberry out from coming back in and retaking over. And I have to fight it daily, actually, like this. There's one thing I like to do, just bend them backwards on themselves. So yeah, we planted the cover crop probably like March. This is when all that happened. And for a while we hadn't had anything else planted. Then we separated the garden out into these different rows, and these strings designate the rows. So we built the rows up so you can see it's a little bit higher here, and this walkway path in between is a little bit lower. So we clearly delineated where we walk and where things grow. And then I think some of the first things that we planted were actually these peas. Just put them in the ground first before this happened. We never put any of the structure up until the peas actually started to shoot up. And once they got to this high or so, they started to need something to lean on, because otherwise they just fall over. So then all of that structure was built up after. Let me get this little jerk. I'm going to have to come back in here later with some clippers and clip back some of these assholes. Anyway. We planted a lot of stuff here that didn't necessarily grow. And a big reason for that is because we didn't have the watering system that we have now. This soaker hose. So we also weren't planning on it being so dry this summer. And we were hoping that there would just be a lot more natural water. We picked this location in the land because it's one of the lowest locations. I mean, this hill is a little bit higher up than the flat ground down there. But if you see that tall tree over there and those grasses sort of to the left of that cement block, there's a little stream, a pond thing down there. So basically the groundwater is pretty close here. We were hoping that the groundwater would stay up in the land. We wouldn't have to do much watering. Well, because of the drought, it turns out that's not the case. So we have been figuring out watering, but So we planted a bunch of different things in different successions. First we tried the snap peas, and in this row we did like snap peas and what did I call these? Turnips. Maybe also like radishes and something else, but nothing really grew in the first round except for the snap peas and I guess these guys, which went straight to seed. But never fear, we continue trying. So meanwhile, some of the other people at the garden have been helping out. They started out some seeds in little starts like this that they were then able to, they planted each in a little bit of soil, their own little thing, and just kept watering them and had it on their deck to watch them grow till they get to about this height. And then once they're this big, then you open it up and take that whole thing and plant it in here and transplant it. So a lot of the stuff that's in the garden now is from different iterations of transplanting. So like this kale was a successful transplant. We actually transplanted a bunch more kale than grew here. See, we planted a whole row across here of kale. And of all of those, the only ones that have survived is like, see this, 2, 3, 4, and then not again till over here. So nothing else in that original thing survived, but those ones did, so that's good. And then we did a wiggly system here where we finally set up this soaker hose, and then along it, we planted, well, first of all, we planted all these kind of guys, which is going to be cucumber, I think it's cucumber or squash, because we planted 2 different things. I think these are all going to be cucumbers. And those, as you can see, was kind of funny. We did half and half, up to about this halfway point here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those all grew. But then we continued the pattern down to here, and nothing over here grew that we planted in of those. So, okay, that's fine. So then the next thing that we did was transplant in these little lettuces, and here's some more lettuce and kale. So here's where I would go back and weed back the things that are sucking the sunlight away from the kale. It's kind of hard. I don't want to hurt you, little kale guy. And then other stuff is just sort of added in. Like we got some basil, which we transplanted, and a lot of it died when we transplanted it, but we just gave it special attention and it's sort of popped back to life. I think this is going to be maybe another like cucumber squash type plant, and then here transplanted some strawberries that Boris almost forgot about, and they were almost totally died by the time we got them in just last week. But I put some fish fertilizer on them, and so they've been popping back. Here is these little plants here, interspersed with, this is the clover, but these little plants are apparently lentils. I'm really curious to see how those grow. I've never seen them before. You can see they're all covered in moisture because I had the water going this morning. So, all right, let's talk about the water really quick. Boris went to the Home Depot and bought a soaker hose system. He spent like $30 on it. But the thing is, it came with, I think it was like 100 feet of hose and all these different connectors. So you could have like T-shaped connectors, and then just regular end-to-end. And then also extra fittings of hose that weren't soaker hose. So the soaker hose you can tell because it's black, and it's just a porous material that will get water droplets on it. But now this is connector material that is not porous. So it connects 2 sections that want to be soaker hose that you don't want to get wet. So none of this grass obviously is going to get wet. And he was able to lay it down and get it to stay in place by just shoving sticks in. The ground already had so many sticks. Just shoving sticks in particular locations. They got the hose to stay in the shape that he wanted. I'm looking for sticks and I don't see any good examples right here. But and this hose in this garden has been down for so long, it's just sort of maintained its shape. Here's a cute little stick. See that stick? Here's another. It just made everything stay in the way that it's needed to be. So my job to maintain this garden has been, as you can tell, there's a lot of weeds. And Boris has read a book on sort of no-till, no-pull gardening. So leave a lot of the weeds and stuff. So I just weed out the nasty guys that are pokey, like the thistle and the blackberry. And I weed back any clover that's in the way of our crops getting sunlight. Like here we go. This is in the way right here. So let me just remove these. And it's good that we have chickens because the chickens love the clover. So it's never going to waste. Here you can see is a bottle that we buried as a slug trap because we were having slug problems in the springtime. And so what you do for the slug trap is you bury a beer bottle with just a little bit of beer because apparently they're attracted to the smell of the beer. And once they get into there, they can't get back out. We also tried this other thing where we crushed up, well, you can do it with eggshells or you can buy at the store crushed up seashells. It's both the same thing. It's like a calcium carbonate. And the point is that it's really sharp and kind of prickly, and slugs don't like sharp things like that. So it would resist it. So we had this whole little white kind of loop that went all the way around the garden. And I kind of joked that in a medieval time, it would look like we put a magic circle around our garden, and that's what protected our plants. So here's our summer garden, which I'm very particularly proud of because actually I have transplanted everything that's in here, and you can't really see much growing yet because it's still a lot younger than the other garden. But here, check it out. We got some kales along this soaker hose. Kale, and here's some more like lettuce heads. And then these little guys are apparently going to be cauliflower, and so they need a lot of space. So they're only planted once, like 3 or 4 per row. And there's one over there. And the rest of this is all cauliflower, so we're gonna have a lot of that. And that actually ends here. I ran out of hose, so all this other garden here doesn't have anything in it, but as you saw what the dog Echo is drinking out of, we still do have more baby cauliflowers that I can transplant once I get enough hose. This hose is broken. I could maybe try adding it on. It's just hard because the ends are broken off and I'd have to shove one of these on. It's annoying. The thing I'm really excited about, I'm really excited about all of this, but this greenhouse was built. I've never got to work in a greenhouse before. And we got a lot of good plants growing in here too. So let me show you. We've got a lot of pepper plants growing. All these guys. Here you go. Here's a pepper. Look at that beauty. That's apparently a sweet pepper. Of all these pepper plants, only 2 of them right now are growing. Here is a big Bertha bell pepper in the mix. And I actually just planted 6 more pepper plants that my roommate's friend brought over. I put those in last night, and I had to rearrange this whole hose system. Here we got some tomato plants, and as they've been getting taller, just suspended it up by a string. So here we go. Oh, look, we got a second tomato. This one's been growing for a while, but here's a second one finally growing. This one isn't tall enough to be put up, but here it's an Amish paste Roma heirloom tomato. And I think each of these tomatoes is different too. I'm not sure. Here's another tomato. And then this is kind of funny. These plants here, we thought we were buying melon plants at the Home Depot. Well, apparently we grabbed the plant that was in the melon labeled section, but it was actually zucchini. So we're like, well, we'll just plant it in here anyway. Now, zucchini don't need to be grown in a greenhouse since we have the cucumber, squash, zucchini, they're all in the same family outside in the other garden. But since we already had the spots in here and we had the plants, we're like, well, let's just put them in here. So you can see this one is doing amazingly well. This looks like a giant squash plant. Here's a little blossom. It's so pretty. And then there's some other mystery plants in the back that are not mine. So the greenhouse, similarly, just had to dig up all the dirt. And then one of the people, Hamilton, he already had the frame and the greenhouse structure. So it just pretty much had to be assembled. But it's a pretty simple structure if you look at it. What you can't see is there are metal poles, sort of like rebar, that are in the ground. So they're pounded in to say about here, and they're probably originally like this tall. So they're halfway in the ground. And these PVC pipes are hollow, and they just slide right over. So you get, let's see, one PVC pipe goes from here to here, so it's this length, whatever that is, and it just fits over. So you just have to lay it out to make sure that you've got them going totally opposite of each other. There's a little bit of a wood frame around it. It's kind of sitting there. It's not really bolted together or anything. One thing that's good is on this side, they've taken this wood, which they secured together, these two pieces with this, and then screwed in to the frame on these pieces. So that gives it a little bit more structural support. And then because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 PVC pipes all going in the same direction, they decided to give it a sort of cross beam support by going across the corners and connecting there. So let's see, there's 2 of those cross beams. And then I think the plastic probably is part of this whole kit, though I'm sure you could buy your own plastic. Maybe it's special greenhouse plastic, I'm not sure, but it just goes over the top. And then this actually came with a door that we don't use. This whole thing unrolls. I've got it rolled up right now. And then the last thing that I'm pretty proud of that we just did is get a little timer system here, which I've got hidden in case it gets too hot. This was probably like the most expensive thing we've bought so far. And it's because I'm going to be gone for 3 weeks at the end of the month. And I need to make sure that all 3 of the gardens continue to get watered even when I'm not here. So I got this thing, Home Depot online. It's like $45 with tax and everything. And it's got a great little computer. The water from the house goes in here. And then I have my 3 different garden systems. And here I get to program how long and what time I'm going to water them. And we don't have enough water pressure to do them all at once, so I do them one at a time. Right now there's a little dripping because I'm still watering the summer garden way out there. This morning, this greenhouse is this hose. This is a soaker hose. It got watered for an hour from 7 to 8 a.m. And then from 8 to 10, the spring garden went on this hose up there. And now from 10 to noon, that one out there. So I get to kind of experiment and see what the best setup is for that. But right now I'm just trying only an hour for the greenhouse, then 2 hours each for the other 2 gardens. So the greenhouse doesn't need as much because all the moisture can stay inside it more often. Anyway, that's pretty much the rundown of everything I've been learning. The cool thing is, I guess, that before I ever did this, the only things I really knew about gardening were basic weeding that I did even when I was a kid. And I did do some transplanting last summer with Boris on his farm, which is just taking little baby plants and making sure to not kill them as you put them in the ground. The other thing I've learned that's really important is anytime you plant either seeds or transplants, you have to give those plants a lot of water for a week. So like a gallon each for each little plant for a week. Every day, give them a gallon kind of thing. And the idea is that if we weren't in a drought, slowly you could be able to wean them off because you're trying to encourage them to grow really, really deep roots that will continue to look deeper and deeper into the soil. If you do just really shallow surface water, they won't be able to get roots as deeply, and so they'll be very dependent on you for their watering, and they just won't grow as well. So yeah, the most surprising thing I think I've learned from gardening is how much water you have to give them. And also, I suppose, how sturdy and robust they are. I really thought, like, especially with transplanting, that I had to be very, very, very delicate or they would just totally collapse. And they're pretty hardy. I mean, so long as you give them a lot of water and you give them a sunny spot to be and you keep the soil moist, they will be pretty happy. Now, some things we've noticed with our soil and our water is I have a well on my property and it has a lot of good extra nutrients in it that apparently the city water doesn't have. Because when we brought these little cauliflower transplants here, I started watering them with my water from the well, and suddenly they just came to life. So my water has a lot of iron and calcium and stuff in it that plants need. And it turns out when we were digging up all of the spring bed, all of that soil was super nutrient dense. It was just like very black and very soft. You know, you hold it up in your hands and you feel it, and it was very light and fluffy, and that's good for soil. There's a good book by this guy Steve Solomon who talks about gardening in the Pacific Northwest, and geographically we usually need the same things, which is like adding more lime or calcium to our soil, and I think potassium. So just adding a little compost is good. I think when we did the summer beds, I'm not gonna put it over there. When we did the summer beds, you can see that there's a lot of cardboard all around everything. I guess I'll go show you. One thing we did do was lay the cardboard down. It was all over the now garden area, all this cardboard. It's been moved to the sides. But first, I guess they found horse manure, which there's a lot of horses around here, so you can pick up for free. But it's really nutrient dense. It's really good stuff. And they laid a bunch of horse manure down and then put the cardboard on top of it and then put a bunch of giant sticks on top of it and just let it sit there from the early spring until the early summer. So like 3 months or so. And then we were able to just sort of remove the cardboard, remove the sticks, remove the cardboard, and the soil was almost perfectly ready to go. We just had to dig it up a little bit. So those are the only soil additions that we've done. And then I guess one other thing is that Boris the other day brought over this stuff called fish fertilizer, which he tells me is a bunch of like old dead fish that they mash up. It's really stinky, actually. It's this brown goo. But it's just packed full of nutrients. It says vegetables, bedding plants, bulbs, annuals, perennials, shrubs, roots, blah, blah, blah. So I just mixed in 2 capfuls of that with a 2-gallon watering bucket. So it's like 1 teaspoon to a gallon. And I just did a once over with all these plants. I didn't even really give them that much, but boy, they sure just exploded after that too. So other than that, I just come here every day and check on everything, weed out any extraneous clover or blackberry, and harvest the peas so far. And it's actually amazingly easy to garden. You just do, I guess you do a lot of work up front to get it all ready, but then once you have it, you just do a little bit every day to maintain it. It's like very low energy input in that way. And the rewards and the benefits are so great. It's amazing. And with his soaker hose drip system, it's using a lot less water than I would if I would do a sprinkler or other things. So it's not super water intensive. And because we have a well, we don't have to pay for water. So it's pretty inexpensive to do all of it. So that's it.